You probably have a watch.
Don't tell me what I have, because you don't know. You don't know the things I have, the things I don't have, the things I feel, the things I've seen, the things I've done, the things I've been through.
Periodically, you adjust it by reckoning from a more accurate source. Whatever the source, it is also imperfect and has to be regularly updated, though not as often, to be in accord with the master clock of the United States at the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C.
Actually, this isn't really true. Most every clock nowadays is set to be in accordance with Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC. And UTC is actually based on International Atomic Time, or TAI, but adjusted with leap seconds to compensate for variation in the Earth's rotation. TAI is determined by over 400 atomic clocks around the world, which are averaged together to make what we use now. The clock at the US Naval Observatory is only one of those clocks.
Until 1967, naval astronomers observed the Earth's motion in relation to the heavens to accurately measure time.
No, actually, what we used was based on Greenwich Mean Time, which was determined by a Royal Observatory in Greenwich. It was not naval at all. And they were reckoning the time based on the sun's position in the sky. I felt like I had to be a bit more specific than just studying the heavens.
All U.S. clocks were set in relation to these precise measurements. It was God who made this master clock of the universe. He set the heavens in motion, and man learned to use its wonderful accuracy.
And what if our lives are just naturally based on the day and night and seasonal cycles? Wouldn't it just make sense that we would base our measurement of time off of this, then? How does that show the existence of God?
But God's great clock holds more marvels.
Yeah, you say that, but then you go on to talk about man-made technologies.
In 1968, scientists built an atomic clock that uses cesium-133 atoms because they vibrate at the rate of 9,192,631,770 times per second.
First of all, they're not measuring vibrations, they're measuring molecular electronic transitions. And yes, there are exactly that many transition within cesium within a second, but that's only because that's literally what we've defined a second to be. We didn't figure out the precise timing of a second and then find out that cesium vibrates that much. We found a way to precisely measure cesium transitions, and we've defined a second based on that. We said, hey, whenever this happens so many times, that's what a second is. So of course this is going to be incredibly accurate because it's working by definition. And we've chosen this measurement because it was the most precise measurement we can make at the time it was established.
This is accurate to within 1 second every 30 million years.
Wait, what? What are you getting this from? How can a second slip by a second in any amount of time?
Cesium-133 atoms never vary a single vibration. They are steady, constant, reliable, and cannot be an accident of nature that just happens to always turn out exactly the same.
Again, they're not vibrations, but these molecular electronic transitions actually do vary. And that's why the cesium standard wasn't based on cesium in general, but specifically hyperfine ground states of cesium, which basically means that they were bringing it down to its lowest energy state in order to measure it according to the laws of physics themselves. Doing it this way made their measurements much more precise and much more stable. But as far as it being an accident of nature, nothing can be an accident of nature, because nature has no intentions, and as such, it can't do anything that is against its intentions. But there's no reason to think that these things couldn't happen naturally. Just because it's amazing to you doesn't mean that God did it.
God had to design the complexity and reliability of these atoms.
No, there's no reason for us to believe that anything in the universe requires a God. Even if we don't understand something, such as the origin of the laws of physics, that doesn't mean that God did it. That just means that we don't really understand everything.
No honest mind can believe otherwise.
You're only saying that because you have an honest mind by your standards, and you've come to your conclusion in your own way, and you don't understand how anybody else can come to a different conclusion. Yes, honest minds can come to different conclusions by analyzing the facts in a different way than you do.
Men merely learned to capture what God designed for use in time measurement.
Or maybe we just found a really precise and stable way of measuring time and then decided to measure time based on it because it was the most reliable thing to do.
Doubters consider this.
He's calling me out now.
Scientists at the National Institute of Standards and Technology in Colorado have built an optical clock even more accurate by measuring time with light.
That's impossible. You can't have a more accurate measurement of time than measurement of the exact definition of time. No matter what, measurement of time by the cesium standard is most accurately measured with cesium. I think what you mean to say is that clocks that use an optical measurement are more precise, which wouldn't be wrong.
These clocks use mercury ions at their heart to count the number of times they vibrate in a second.
No, not all of them. These optical clocks can use a number of elements, most precise of which use strontium or yttrium being the most precise.
Scientists have harnessed God's precision to better measure time.
No, they just found a very precise way of measuring incredibly small increments of time.
As with the movement of the heavens, men have learned to capture the reliability of cesium-133 atoms and the movement of cooled mercury ions to count time with oscillations per second that never vary.
You mean that don't vary when you push them up against physical limitations?
Could such perfect order really be the result of an accident?
Again, not an accident, but yes, these things could happen without a God. The laws of physics don't necessarily require a God to be here.
With great time and effort, the world's finest watchmakers can at best devise relatively imprecise clocks.
Well, yeah, if you're talking about traditional analog clocks, but we've already made clocks better than traditional analog clocks. We've made these cesium and optical clocks. Did you forget that? Do you think God made these clocks? We did. And just because we found precise ways to measure stable increments of time doesn't mean that God put it there.
Can any fair-minded person believe the three highly precise clocks, the heavens, atomic, and optical clocks, came by chance?
This question is troublesome in many ways. First of all, the cesium and optical clocks didn't come by chance. We constructed them to be the way that they are. We've manipulated cesium and other elements in order to be able to precisely measure time. Even then, it's imperfect. And your clock of the heavens isn't actually very precise. Earth's rotation changes, the day and night cycle doesn't fit into an Earth year, and Earth's orbit around the sun is actually moving further away from the sun. These things make the solar system an imprecise clock. And the atomic clocks that we've made are more precise than your heavenly clock. This means that if God exists, we've done a better job at making clocks than he has.
Are we to believe that very sophisticated, humanly devised watches required the effort and ingenuity of skilled, intelligent men to create them, but clocks of far greater sophistication, precision, and design developed on their own?
The solar system developed by natural processes, and like I've stated, our sophisticated way of measuring time is better than your heavenly clock. I don't see how any of this indicates the existence of a God. Just because we make incredible technology does not mean that everything else around us was made in the same way.
How utterly foolish to believe.
It's foolish to believe things that you don't believe. It's foolish to disagree with you. It's foolish to think about things in a different way and thereby come to a different conclusion than you. It's foolish to do more research than you, find out the information for ourselves, and realize the error in your logic. It's foolish to think that God doesn't exist because you think God exists. Is this what I'm hearing? Because I can't tolerate ad hominem attacks on people simply for disagreeing. In fact, I'd like people who disagree with me to talk to me and tell me why they disagree. So that way, I can evaluate their claims and maybe, if they're more correct than I am, evaluate my ideas. That is more intellectually honest. Saying anybody is a fool for not seeing things the way you see them, that is foolish.
You've seen absolute proof only the greatest watchmaker, God, could have devised these greatest watches.
This is not absolute proof of anything. And while making this video, I found out if God exists, then in the area of clockmaking, we're better than him. I have to research the most boring things sometimes.